I hear the member. There are a number of challenges with the approach. But just to say a couple of things, I think what the bill is clear on is that the Auditor General has the authority under the law, as it does inside and out, but in this bill it is clear to examine the accounts. What the member proposes elevates the Auditor General as the primary auditor. The challenge with that is that we know that there are challenges oftentimes where we have legislated for the Auditor General to be the only auditor. Mind you, she suggested primary, not only, but based on the formulation, the NaRRA may decide. I suggest, Chair, that what we have proposed is a stronger scheme. Is a stronger scheme because it mandates the agency to employ an auditor, which would be selected by the Cabinet Secretary with the approval by the Cabinet. And I want to make the point that having heard the concerns regarding the CEO being the person who recommends the auditor, this is being changed and now provides another layer of protection by the Cabinet Secretary recommended with the approval of the Cabinet. Additionally, the Auditor General, it is clear, still has the authority. So I would support the section as amended.
Madam Chair.
Morgan, please just allow Member Samudo, member from St. Anne Northeast, an intervention, and then you may go ahead.
Madam Chair, we have public bodies that have been waiting since 2010 for the Auditor General to complete their audits. Let us not add to their burden. That is a matter of public record. Literally, public bodies that we criticize in this House are waiting their audits and their annual reports since 2010. Let us not add to the burden of the Auditor General. Nothing in this bill stops the Auditor General from doing real-time audits as they have done in recent time. Special audits, performance audits. Nothing in this bill reduces the role and the constitutional authority of the Auditor General. But to add work to an overburdened authority is not in the interest of this Parliament or of this country or of the intention of this bill. Please.
Thank you, member. Please turn your mic off. Member Morgan.
Can we put the clause as amended, Chair?
Members, the clause 9 is being put as amended. Those, let me first ask for the amendment as amended. Those in favor? Is it in the amendment sheet the leader of opposition is asking?
Yes, it is.
The answer is yes. I put the clause as amended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Chair, we wish to propose an amendment for clause 10. And we want to delete the clause and substitute therefore the following: reports, returns, etc. 10.1. The Chief Executive Officer shall prepare and submit to the Minister a report on the activities of the authority in relation to the discharge of the authority's function under this Act in accordance with subsections 2 and 3. 2. The report referred to in subsection 1 shall be prepared in respect of an initial 6-month period commencing after the appointed day and every subsequent 6-month period after that initial period. 3. The report made by the Chief Executive Officer under subsection 1 shall be submitted to the Minister within 14 days of the 6-month period in relation to which the report is made, and the Chief Executive Officer shall afford the Minister with facilities for verifying such information in such manner and such times as the Minister may reasonably require. And 4, The minister shall cause a copy of the report submitted under subsection 3 to be laid in the House of Representatives and Senate. I wish to put the amendment and the clause.
Go ahead, opposition leader.
Madam Chair, I wish to propose an amendment to the amendment. I note that this report, which I fully agree that that should be done, it has to be done within 14 days of the end of the 6-month period. I would have said 30 because for things happening the last month, it's a tight period for that report to be prepared, checked, etc. So
I have no challenge in accepting.
I want to.
It's a reasonable amendment.
Yeah, there's also, but apart from that, I want to say that I think built into this regime should be the model that was introduced in 2020 in the amendment to the Bank of Jamaica Act, where Section 44 of the Principal Act now requires the report, when it reaches the minister, to be submitted or laid in the House, and the formulation there is as soon as practicable after receiving the report. So the minister has to, as soon as practicable after receiving the report, must table it in the House, and then a provision saying that the report is referred to the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives, and that committee may require the Chief Executive Officer to attend a meeting of the Standing Finance Committee to answer any questions in relation to the report. That is what happens in relation to the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica for his reports. And we've seen the benefit of it in relation to monetary policy, transparency, understanding what's going on, and so on. And for this purpose, this would be an important instrument of transparency and oversight of the Parliament for the Chief Executive Officer to come here and answer questions from any member in the Standing Finance Committee on his report. And I'm proposing an amendment to do that.
I'm just making sure the leader of opposition is finished.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, for now.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have sympathy to the view that the head of NaRRA should come and report to Parliament. Indeed, at the legislation committee, that was also my suggestion, and I actually pointed out to the drafts persons the model which was introduced under this administration for the BOJ which allows for the BOJ governor to come and report. There are some challenges with that which members should appreciate. The first thing is that, so we have no problem with as soon as practicable. I mean, that the timeliness of tabling and so forth, that's not a challenge for us. The problem is that, one, the model was designed because the Bank of Jamaica is an independent entity. The legislation essentially now makes the BOJ independent. So it would not be usual, and I stand to be corrected, but it would not be usual for any committee of Parliament to call the BOJ to come and explain their monetary policy decisions. And therefore, we had to find a way to put in law for the monetary policy to come. Not for us to give directions to the BOJ, let's be clear, but as the leader of the opposition said, to get a better understanding of what the monetary policy is and to make our suggestions. But we can't direct the Bank of Jamaica as it relates to its monetary policy. So this framework that was created, was done to allow the BOJ to come and for us to have dialogue and discussion. as it relates to NaRRA, NaRRA is not an independent body. NaRRA's authority flows from the cabinet, and its oversight is enshrined in law by virtue of the PAAC, the PAC, or any committee of parliament can require NaRRA to come and present in parliament because that power already exists. So to put that in law would be kind of redundant. And that is why we have said we bring the report, table it as quickly as possible, and we cannot prescribe, we wouldn't in law prescribe which committee of parliament should review the report. Parliament, that's for parliament, for us to decide which committee. It may very well be that you want to use the PAAC to do it, but you might have another committee that does it. Infrastructure might want to do it, or maybe standing finance could do it. So it is for the parliament to decide. So I'm sympathetic, and I think the way in which it is crafted in the bill allows for the report to be tabled, and as soon as possible, the procedures of Parliament can be put in place, go into operations to summon to Parliament the head of the entity to come and present, as is done for any other entity.
Chair, we wish to adjust based on recommendations by the Leader of the Opposition in subsection 3 of the amendment from 14 days to 30 days. And in subsection 4 of the amendment, we want to insert the sentence at the end of the subsection, as soon as practicable. And then we wish to put the amendments and the clause.
Members,
Before we put the amendments, just to say that the benefit of what I'm proposing is that all members of the House get the opportunity to ask questions to the Chief Executive Officer on any issues arising from the report. This is important because NaRRA is an extraordinary agency. It's not a normal construct. It doesn't have a board. It enables the minister to step in and override all regulatory bodies. It enables NaRRA to issue directions to all regulatory bodies. That includes environmental bodies, planning bodies, local authorities, etc. And it is not there's not sufficient transparency built into the structure. And that is why I think there may be projects in particular constituencies where an MP wants to ask questions on something coming out of the report. It should be open to all members on both sides to be able to say to the Chief Executive Officer, this is a report, you have a project here, how come this, why not this, so on and so on. And we invigilate that, and then we have the benefit of transparency around that. I appreciate the point that the role of Bank of Jamaica is somewhat different because it's independent. But I would say the same reasons why it is important that the governor come to the Parliament to give account on monetary policy and exchange rate policy, the same reason why the CEO of NaRRA, administering 6.7 billion US worth of funding or whatever it may end up being, which is new debt for the country, doing all these major projects, granting all kind of benefits to private sector projects that would otherwise have to fully comply with the regulatory regime, all of that, there ought to be that opportunity. So I agree it's not on all fours with BOJ, Prime Minister. I'm not saying it is. But I think the reasons are compelling to allow that for all members to do it. Yeah, but if it's not in the law, who's to say that you will? Majority will then rule. So it's important, I think, that the Act itself provide a mechanism.
Minister Morgan.
Chair, I wish to amend subsection 4, and I want to correct what I said earlier. It should read, the minister shall, as soon as practicable, cause a copy of the report submitted under subsection 3 to be laid in the House of Representatives and the Senate, full stop. And we wish to put the amendments and the clause
I put clause 10 as amended. Those in favor? Those against? Pardon me? Divide?
Mr. Azan, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown Burke, Mr. Buchanan, Mr. Bunting, Ms. Burchell, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Chang, Mr. Charles Jr., Mr. Chuck, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Mr. Crawford, Miss Crawford, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Miss Daly, Mrs. Dalrymple Philibert, Dr. Dawes, Mr. Golden, Mr. Gordon, Ms. Grange, Mr. Green, Ms. Hamilton, Mr. Hales, Mr. Hines, Dr. Holness, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Ms. Jess, Ms. Lee, Mrs. Malahu Fort, Mrs. Malahu Fort, she said yes. Ambassador Marks, Mr. Main, Mr. Mackenzie, Mrs. Miller Bennett, Mr. Montague, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Morris, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Newell, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Ms. Perkis, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Dr. Russell, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Seabright, Ms. Shaw, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Smith, Mr. Terlong, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Darrell Vaz, Mr. Dwayne Vaz, Mr. Everall Warmington, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Delroy Williams, Mr. Donovan Williams, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Witter.
The clause carries, the vote being 31 for government. Dr. Chang, you stepped in a minute late or 1 vote late. So members, you can be reminded, the nays 24 and those absent 6. I am not sure whether Member Bunting voted yes or no. I'm not sure who said aye. Okay. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. Go ahead, Minister Morgan.
Chair, I wish to put clause 11.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Ayes have it.
Chair, I wish to put clause 12.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Chair, I have an amendment to clause 13. It should say in subclause 1, in subclause 1, insert next after the word directions, the word in writing. So it should say after the word directions, the words in writing. I wish to put the clause on amendment.
Hold on a minute, Leader of the Opposition. Going with the Leader of the Opposition first, and then the member from St. James, West Central.
Thank you. I wanted to ask the Prime Minister whether he would agree in subsection 1, where it says the minister may give directions in writing to the authority, whether he would agree that those directions should be published on NaRRA's website. The reason I'm asking is because it's not just directions of general policy here, but it's directions which go to the performance of the authority of its functions and to ensure that its activities essentially comply with what the cabinet has approved. So it's a very intrusive thing. So if you're going to the route of ministerial directions, would you agree to having them published on the website of NaRRA?
Member Malahoo Ford.
Thank you, Chairman. Just seeking some understanding in relation to the directions that are to be given. The bill mandates compliance with those directions because clause 13.3 says the authority shall act in compliance with the directions given under subsection 1. And then at clause 4, it says a contravention of any direction under this section shall not invalidate any transaction. If the directions are to be complied with mandatorily, how is it that a contravention of it may not invalidate a transaction? And then for any suit that arise, indemnity is to be provided. It just seems somewhat problematic.
So that
Go ahead.
I don't see an inconsistency between saying that the directions are mandatory, if that's what you want to say, but preserving transactions from illegality
Yes.
and unenforceability,
Yes.
which is very important.
Yes.
Because third parties dealing with NaRRA
Yes.
should not be at risk of having their transactions invalidated as a result of non-compliance with the direction, especially when they may not even be aware of it. So the question really is subsection 3, which says that the authority shall act in compliance. What is the remedy if it doesn't? And I suppose a remedy would be that the CEO would be fired, because that's a power that would be given to the minister, the prime minister in the schedule. But I don't think it's a criminal act or anything of that nature, but it would be something which would be a breach of the act and therefore grounds for removal from office. But it should not invalidate transactions with third parties. And there are many instances in the law where things which are prohibited in law are not invalidated in terms of their contractual effect. For example, I can take things to do with, for example, foreign currency transactions where you're supposed to be a prescribed or authorized dealer to engage in them. The fact you're not may mean that you're subject to sanction, but it doesn't prevent the enforceability and validity of any transaction you may enter into with another player in the market. Yeah.
Minister Morgan.
The leader of the opposition agrees with my position and the position for the bill. Can we put the amendment and the clause?
The question asks of the Prime Minister about putting all the letters on the website of NaRRA.
This is a matter that we contemplated. It was raised, you raised it in the debate last week. We contemplated it. The better thought on it would not be to publish the written directions. In any event, those directions would come via, some of them would be based upon cabinet decisions, and they would be in the report to Parliament from the actual, from the CEO, because he would have to say what were directions given to him and what he has done. But it would, I think, create a challenge for the minister to be constantly publishing the instructions, including, you might issue an instruction today, you might have to change it tomorrow, because it's very fluid and dynamic. So I would not want to put that in the legislation.
Minister Morgan.
Me, that if it is that the directions issued in writing by the minister are to be included in the CEO's report, which goes to Parliament, I'm okay with that. That is transparency. There's nothing in the provision that deals with that report which says that directions given to the CEO must be included in the report. But if it's the understanding of the House, based on what the Prime Minister has said, which is recorded in Hansard, that report must or should include any directions given and followed or not followed, I would be content with that, because that achieves my objective, which is transparency. There's nothing I have suggested today which is designed to do anything other than make the body more accountable and transparent. Nothing that I've suggested today that would slow down its performance, its effectiveness. To the contrary, it will enhance trust and confidence in it and improve its performance.
Thanks, Opposition Leader. Yes, Minister Morgan.
I wish to put the clause as amended and the clause. I wish to put the amendment
Those
and
in
the clause.
favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
I wish to put clause 14, 15, and 16 without amendment.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
I wish to make
Gone already. No,
I
gone
wish
already.
to make amendments to clause 17.
Come.
So clause 17. So there are several amendments I wish to make. One of them is not in the amendment sheet. Clause 17 in subclause 2A, insert next after the word I have no challenge with the recommittal. I have no challenge with the recommittal of clause 14.
The question is that the recommittal to clause 14, those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Member from Eastern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In relation to 14.2, yes, it says nothing in this section prevents disclosure to any person which is permitted or required under this act or any other law. I'm just asking that the words prescribed and designated be included in the amendment. That is it.
I didn't hear you.
The words after permitted, comma, prescribed, comma, designated or required under this act. It's two words.
The issue I'm having is we are repeating things that are in other legislation. Nothing in this law prevents disclosure. There is the Protected Disclosures Act, which governs this law. There's the Access to Information Act, which governs this law. No entity is precluded from getting information. So why am I repeating?
It's not a repetition. Just trust me on this one. It's a legal term, and they are important. Prescribed.
I don't have an issue. What is the language you said you wanted?
Repeat the language. Prescribed.
Nothing in this section prevents.
Which is permitted, comma, prescribed, comma, designated, or required under this act or any other law. That is it. Just adding those two words, prescribed and designated.
I will hold on a second for me.
No problem.
Just to ask you, also, if the court makes an order for disclosure of some kind in proceedings before the court involving NaRRA, that should be an exception from the secrecy provision. And that is not covered by the language here. It's not covered by the language here. Yeah, but the court wouldn't have jurisdiction to make an order if the statute says that the information is secret.
Portland Eastern, can you repeat for the team what your amendment was?
After permitted, comma, prescribed, comma, designated, or required under this act or any other law. So you're only inserting after permitted, comma, prescribed, comma, designated.
Sorry, we can't accept that amendment. And I'll explain to you. So prescribed is defined in the Interpretation Act, right? And it says, means prescribed by the act in which the word occurs or by any regulation made thereunder and in relation to any regulations where no other authority is empowered. in that behalf in the act means prescribed by the Governor General in Council, right? That's not necessary to add to this act because the act already covers pretty much all the variables that are contemplated. Can we put the clause as amended?
No.
No, I'm sorry. Clause 14 as amended, please put, no, clause 14, please put clause 14, my apologies, not as amended.
The request is that clause, those in favor? Those against, ayes have it.
Okay, so we are now at clause 17 and we have several amendments in clause 17. The first
Clause
one,
18.
no, 17.
You said 15 and 16.
So now we're at 17. We did 15 and 16 already. We voted on that already. So we're now at clause 17, and there are a couple amendments. One, for full disclosure, is not on the amendment sheet, so I'll read it for our members to know what it is. The first one, in subclause 2A, insert next after the word develop the word projects. So in subclause 2A, no man, there's another amendment that's not on the amendment sheet. And then there's another one, insert next after subclause 3 the following. 4. The authority shall, in developing and for monitoring the implementation of reconstruction and resilience projects, programs, and plans, hold consultations with persons affected or likely to be affected by the implementation of a project. And that's an amendment that was requested by members of civil society. And there is a new clause, 5, for the avoidance of doubt, a reference in this act to a project shall be construed as a project included on the official list. Let me read that again. 5, and we're adding subsection 5. For the avoidance of doubt, a reference in this act to a project shall be construed as a project included on the official list. I wish to put the
Opposition leader first.
There's a reference to the official list. What is the official list? Because does I thought the official list was limited to the approved reconstruction and resilience project.
It's in clause 17 and 20. If you read clause 17, cabinet shall cause to be issued to the authority an official list of approved reconstruction and resilience project. Remember, the opposition called for.
Right. All right.
You called for a definition of projects.
Yes. It's an odd place to do it, but okay. They better somewhere than nowhere. Should really be in clause 2. I mean, somebody looking for a definition is not going to be looking in clause 17 for a definition.
It's for the avoidance of doubt.
Should be in clause 2, which is what I suggested before. Anyway, Madam Chair, in the original amendment sheet, there was a more extensive version of what is now the subsection 4. And it read 4. This is what was tabled today during the debate by the government. It said, the authority shall, A, in developing and for monitoring the implementation of reconstruction and resilience projects, programs, and plans, 1, hold public consultations with members of the communities affected or likely to be affected by the implementation of a project. 2, discuss projects, programs, and plans with representatives of non-governmental organizations and vulnerable groups, including women, persons with disabilities, the elderly, children, and youth. And B, during the implementation of a reconstruction and resilience project, meet every 6 months with members of affected communities, civil society, the private sector, and other interested individuals to discuss and receive feedback on the implementation of the project, the programs and plans for the project, and the various related activities. Now, that's a much more comprehensive requirement than this very truncated version, which just says that in developing and for monitoring the implementation, hold consultations. But this, it doesn't say, it doesn't go into any kind of detail as to who should be included, etc. Why have you departed from what? Which I had thought was a salutary and beneficial amendment, and you've come with something else which is much shorter. Not to me.
So, in consultation with the drafters, and we sat for hours.
Well,
Leader of the opposition,
when did you
if you'll
sit-
allow me.
So we tabled it this afternoon, and you've been in here ever since. So when did you sit
You
for
noticed
hours?
I was absent on the Prime Minister for a while. So what happened? To be fair to you, we looked at the clause and we got advice from the drafters that the clause had a limiting effect, and the current clause gives you the ability to consult with a wider cross-section of individuals.
It's not going to happen.
Those persons affected or likely to be affected.
That's terrible advice. It's not going to happen, because if you're just saying hold consultations with persons affected or likely to be affected, that is going to be interpreted in a way which is convenient to whoever's organizing the consultation. If you had it in this other way, you would have to make effort to include vulnerable groups, including persons with disabilities and the elderly, children and youth. This is a better formulation.
Not in how we see
This
it.
way, no one can be excluded. Or saying, you know, I am not named. This way, it's spoken.
Member Hilton, then Member Green.
Thank you,
Oh,
Chairman.
no. And Member Russell,
Thank you, Chairman. Prime
then
Minister,
Member Green.
Prime Minister,
Can I give her?
Prime Minister,
Give the
Prime Minister.
time of the
Remember, in my contribution, brief as it was, I argued and urged that communities that are affected should be consulted on, because the phrase was very wide. They would consult relevant persons, and I argued that the affected communities should be consulted with, and you said that will be addressed. And when I saw this earlier iteration, I was quite pleased. I thought that an attempt was made to identify specifically that affected communities and persons, particularly vulnerable persons and communities, would be specifically identified. Now, that doesn't limit the authorities' ability to consult with whomever else they want, but the affected communities is specific, and you should have, at minimum, that consultation. If you want to go wider, that's well within the remit of the authority.
All right. No. So, hold on, opposition leader.
It was Russell.
All right.
provision
So,
could be
opposition
added.
leader, you may go ahead.
Yes, I'm suggesting that the words in the new provision, which is persons affected or likely to be affected by the implementation of a project, could be added as a catch-all to the new provision. So it could say, discuss projects, programs, and plans with representatives of non-governmental organizations and vulnerable groups, including women, persons, the elderly, and children, youth, and any other persons affected or likely
including
to be
but not
affected.
limited to. That's what I was suggesting.
Well, you know,
Including but not limited.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to say that. Trust me. They're not going to use that formulation. But
Right.
no, because they just don't. But you're right.
But the opposition leader's point carries because.
So it's a catch-all. Let's say, and any other persons affected or likely to be affected by the implementation of a project.
I think it was Member Russell.
Member
Sorry.
Russell, you had another point, Member Russell, or that was it? That was your statement? All right, so that's it from Member Russell. Member Green.
So, Madam Speaker, I represent an area that we expect NaRRA will do significant reconstruction work. And as such, we value this new provision which codifies that consultation are to be held. I've said time and time again, Madam Speaker, that we have to be very careful how far we go in legislation. Because once we put it to law, that these persons must be consulted with and you start defining the categories of consultation, we may actually lead to the paralysis that we're trying to avoid. Right? This gives the authority a wider breadth in terms of consultation because it subsumes all the categories without individually listing them. And this is a much better approach because, Madam Speaker, again, I will be clear. This gives us a wide array based on what is put in this new dispensation because it says persons affected are likely to be affected, which includes the vulnerable, which includes persons with disability, which includes everybody who is affected or likely to be affected, and we will have them at the table. But what I disagree with, member, is to legislate in the manner that you have suggested. And because at the end of the day, we have to strike a balance to ensure that we don't put in a legislation that paralyzes action. Very important. So I agree with the drafters on this one, that this iteration provides wider scope, but also allows the organization to act.
Go ahead, Prime Minister.
When we contemplated the NaRRA bill, we recognized that from the outset we would have to consult with the communities affected, whether they be the physical community affected or demographic community affected. It was not specifically itemized in any clause in the bill. The leader of the opposition raised the issue again, and civil society, the letters written to us. And what we did was to give a policy direction. The drafters would interpret that policy direction. The policy direction is we want the broadest consultations. And I believe the way in which the drafters have coined it in the clause gives a wider breadth than for us to go to name specific categories which could be limiting.
Madam Chair, and through you, Prime Minister.
Morgan,
Can
Member
we
Samudo.
put the clause as amended?
Madam Chair.
So, Madam Chair, and
Madam,
certainly in support of the Prime Minister's point, the special benefits regulations that come to both the House and the Senate, where myself and the leader of the opposition served, deals with the NHT allocations of homes. And there are particular groups that are mentioned and there are particular groups that are not mentioned. For instance, every single development that the NHT does has a special benefit allocation for the disabled, but it is not legislated as such. No, it's not legislated as such. It's something that we discussed and went through with the board while myself and yourself sat on the Regulations Committee of the Senate. So we know that there's precedent to not legislate for every single group as is done for the NHT. So even though the police, for instance, get an allocation out of every single NHT development, it is not legislated or regulated as such. The disabled community are given preference for every single NHT development, even though it is not legislated or regulated as such. It is not abnormal. No, and I've pressured for it, but the leader of the opposition sat in the Senate with me when we had this discussion, so he should be familiar that there is precedent for not listing every single group, because we have discussed that there in another place, and it was agreed. Leader of the opposition, it's not abnormal, and we went through this already in another place. Madam Chair.
Leader of Opposition, last comment. Thanks.
That it is clear that the government is not minded to use its original formulation of this amendment tabled this afternoon. I think by not referring to those people, those groups, in reality, they're going to be excluded. or they're not going to be sufficiently included. It's important to mention them, but I'm not going to belabor the point any further other than to say I disagree with their exclusion.
Oh, no, hold on. I thought you were finished. Turn your mic on again, please.
I want to ask in the 17.2a, where you've put the word project, I think it is, or something. Projects. In the list of things that what must be included, it says project scope, delivery arrangements, and timelines. Why is the project budget not included in that list? This is what I believe has to go to cabinet. Why is the project budget not there? Why are the funding arrangements not there? The funding arrangements for the project? And why are the contractors and professionals to be engaged by the project not there? Those seems to be three glaring omissions from what is in these plans and programs. Project budgets, the funding arrangements for the project, and the contractors and professionals to be engaged in the project.
Go ahead, Prime Minister.
So, I mean, I think it's a reasonable observation, but while Minister Morgan comes back, it is not always the case, and I'm speaking now without having reference to what Minister Morgan may come back to say in response to it, but my initial view on it may be that some of those matters, such as budgets, may not be finalized. They might be preliminary. Timelines might be preliminary. And therefore, but it might not be.
So
we might approve a project, but not necessarily the budget.
So if you look at section clause 19, so you have clause 17, which speaks about the development of programs and detailed plans includes project scope, etc., and timelines. But then if you look at 19, it says the authority shall prepare plans for the implementation of approved reconstruction and resilience project. Those things will be in the implementation plan will include those things logically.
The way it speaks to detailed plans. It says detailed plans, and then it says including certain things, but some things are omitted, some fundamental things are omitted.
The problem with
I'm
listing,
not believing the point. I just wasn't sure why you'd left it out. You know. Yeah, but you've listed three things, but you haven't listed three other critical things.
But they will be logically. Can we put the clause as amended, please?
I put the clause as amended. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it.
Hold on. We have something. What did you say? Yes, I said put the amendment and the clause.
I put the amendments.
Put the amendment and the clause.
Those in favor? I put the clause as amended. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it.
Chair, we wish to put clause 18 and 19.
Let me just check to see if there are any comments there. Okay. Are there any amendments?
No amendments to 18 and 19.
I put clause 18 and 19.
I wish to have an amendment to clause 20.
Hold on a minute. Member from St. James, West Central.
I didn't have it. It's a new one. I'll read it. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just querying, what are the functions of the authority? The functions at 19.1 speak to the approved reconstruction and resilience project. Do these functions also apply to the designated strategic investment project?
I'm about to insert something in clause 20, which may be of assistance.
Member, turn your mic off, please.
Just a minute, Madam Chairman. The monitoring and implementation of plans.
Go to clause 20 And then if it does not satisfy Member Malahoo Fort's concern, then we will go back to the clause. So continue with the insertion for clause 20.
Insert, in clause 20, insert in subclause 1, after the words resilience projects, the words and designated strategic investment projects. Let me repeat. 20. In clause 20, insert in subclause 1, next after the words resilience projects, the words and designated strategic investment projects.
Member Malahoo Fort?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question still remains. So at clause 19, the authority is mandated to prepare plans for the implementation of approved reconstruction and resilient projects in consultation with the relevant persons, monitor the implementation of such plans, review and update the plans periodically, and after all, any material change of which the authority has notice that is likely to adversely affect or delay implementation of the plan in whole or in part or otherwise, as circumstances require.
If you don't
those
mind,
functions.
Member Malahoo Fort, if you don't mind, instead of reading back the entire legislation, just get to what you believe would be the best amendment as best as you can.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Malahoo Fort,
Madam,
it is 12:45. It is 12:45.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead and
Is
just
it the
go to
intention
clause.
for these functions to also apply to the designated strategic investment projects?
I heard your question before, so
Yes.
I know you could
Because
have
the
asked that
reference,
question
the
directly.
inclusion of
Minister,
the strategic,
Are
designated
you hearing the
strategic
question?
investment project at clause 20 does not answer the question at clause 19.
your question before at clause 19 was said, and it was so succinct that I couldn't understand why you needed to read the clause in its entirety. Minister? '20 didn't apply, which is why I went back to Member Malahoo's initial intervention
Madam Chairman,
because it didn't
Madam
cover
Chairman, one of the overarching concern is whether the bill as drafted achieves what we say it is. And one of the recurring points is a monitoring function, monitoring for implementation.
Member Malahoo, that's why I went back to the clause.
My understanding, member, is that in this regime, the clause 19 functions don't apply to the designated strategic investment projects at all. The only thing in the bill that applies to them are the things to do with helping them to be expedited. That's all, not planning, budgeting. These are private sector projects. All you're doing is trying to speed up economic growth by running them through the system as quickly as you can, right? That is a limited... 19 is dealing with public resources and public projects.
I know.
We will explain.
Go ahead, Member Green.
No, I agree with the leader of the opposition. I think it's clear that it is in regard to the public component of NaRRA. I think we have clearly defined two different sets of projects, and one is really about expediting those that are public-private. But this, in terms of preparing plans, monitoring the implementation, has to do with those projects that would have been approved by cabinet and are public in nature. So,
Member Malahoo Fort.
In relation to clause 20, Madam Chairman.
Are you comfortable with clause 19?
Madam Chairman, I ask a question. A response has been
No,
provided.
I want to make sure before I move ahead So I'm asking, so you're comfortable? So clause 20, go ahead.
The clause is now being amended to include the private sector projects. And the register speaks to the name and description of the project. With the inclusion of the private sector side, should it include the developer or those who are behind the private sector project in that register?
Registered, you know. Member Green.
The clause indicates that other particulars can be prescribed. Right, I think that is clear. So these are in relation to national strategic projects. I wouldn't specifically put in the legislation that the developer must be included, but the name, the description, and clearly other particulars can be prescribed. That's my view on it.
Madam Chair, I guess the question is, what's the purpose of the register? Because if the register serves as a reference point, then other particulars should not be left to chance. So the developer, the sources of funding, if, for example, there's an environmental breach, does the register allow you to identify who has developed the project, who is... So let me recap for the minister who was probably missed the point. The question was asked,
In the register.
should the developer be included in the register at 20? So the question is, what's the purpose of the register? If it is to serve, for example, to ensure that you can understand and, I guess, seek redress in case something goes wrong. So you would need more details, and it should not be left to chance as to what's included. So budget,
Sorry.
developer.
No. Sorry.
Yeah?
My understanding of the register is to provide public-facing detail or a resource that the public can see what projects are being undertaken by NaRRA. It is not to do the other things that you have suggested. It is not the route through which, if there is a breach, you would access. It's to ensure, as the Prime Minister has clearly said, that the projects that are under the NaRRA framework, that the public knows what those projects are, the name, description, etc.
But how, if you bring in the private sector projects into the register now, how could you possibly have a project being executed by a private entity without saying which entity it is? I mean, that must be the minimum transparency required of a register. How can you have a register which lists a project without saying whose project?
Who says it's not going to be in the register? It says any other particulars as maybe.
So we're saying those particulars should not be left to chance.
It would be.
It may never be prescribed.
No, but you're asking us.
In fact, I doubt it will be, knowing the rate at which we develop regulations.
We cannot legislate every single minute detail of a process.
But through you, Chair,
reasonable.
National development projects are gazetted in this way. This is not inconsistent. National development projects, which are so designated by the Minister of Finance, are already carried to the House and designated in this way. They're gazetted in this way. It's not inconsistent. This is actually the model that exists. It existed for the Western Resilience Water Project. It existed for the Rio Cobra project, certainly that I'm familiar with. The same way you gazette the project, you carry it to the House. The Minister of Finance has to carry the order written by the CPC. It's not inconsistent. It is. You don't. When you designate that project, you don't designate who is doing it. You don't designate very much a lot of details around it. You designate it so that you can clear the pathway for it to be executed. It's not unusual.
A project being done by GDM or whoever. No, you're not hiding from the public.
No, you're not hiding from the public. You're actually carrying
the name and description of the project. What would be what would you describe the project?
So,
So, Madam Chairman, from a policy perspective, what we are trying to accomplish is to have every project known to the public that NaRRA is funding, executing, facilitating. Right? And if private persons are going to benefit from facilitation, possible access to funding, then the public should know who they are. Now, the challenge that we have is, who do we name? Do we name an individual? Do we name a company? I mean, what you would want to put in the public domain would be the promoters of the project. So I don't have a challenge in
And Prime Minister, under the Town and Country Planning Act, which will govern every project because they have to get approvals, the law requires that parish councils must have a public register which details every single application for every project that takes place. So it's not a case where the projects are being done in secret, right? But if it is that, it is the intention to add.
Yeah, we could put the promoters of the project, or developers, whichever it be, for the private one, promoters, because that's really what you want to who are the people who are the I don't know what the term in law would be to describe who are the persons developing or promoting a project.
Just a quick question on the side. Is Member Bunting still here? Because PAAC is in a few hours and some of the members are indicating that they're driving to the country and it is challenging for them to drive there and get back. So they're asking House Leader to consider postponement because they're still here at 1 a.m. So House Leader, could you get a message to Member Bunting, Chair? You sent him a message? Okay, no problem. Yes, Member Paulwell will send a message. Okay. Members, your concern has been duly noted. Member Paulwell will send Chair a message to indicate. It means that it also puts the ministry, the organizations who are slated to come at short notice of postponement. Mr. Cowan, you will take charge of the internal. All right, continuing. Minister. Member Paulwell, minute. No, that's him, but the parliament staff who would be required to be here tomorrow are also present now. I can't ask them to leave the sitting. So we are having a challenge because when I stepped in earlier, the marshal raised the issue, and based on the time, I do believe that we will have a challenge. I have to also think about the health and wellness of the parliamentary staff.
So we agree in principle, but we are trying to determine the language. So can we move on while we determine the language? I wish to put 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. We're coming back to 20. Chair?
So you're coming back to 20. However, we are taking 18 and 19.
Right.
And it means it stands because
Right.
I've not heard of any amendment that really
Right.
now adjusts 18 and 19. I'd gone back to allow
Chair?
the member
Chair?
to elucidate. So we're skipping 20 and we're going to 21.
21,
And we
22,
will go back to
23,
20.
24, and 25. I wish to
Put
take
them.
those. I
Those
wish to
in
put
favor?
those.
Those against? The ayes have it.
For clause 26. For clause 26, I want to renumber clause 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34 as sections 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35 respectively. And there's a reason why I was very slow in reading. And insert next after clause 25 the following: exemption from PIMS. 26. Section 48B2B, comma, 40, chair, 48J, and the fourth schedule to the Financial Administration and Audit Act shall not apply to approved reconstruction and resilience projects or designated strategic investment projects. I wish to put the amendments and the clause, Chair. You're not paying?
I heard the renumbering and I heard next. I am still partially listening. I'll allow the opposition leader to make his comment and the member from St. James West Central.
Yeah, I'm just kind of on. I can understand that PIMS shouldn't apply to the designated strategic investment projects because those are private sector projects. But in relation to the public sector projects, PIMS is part of the fiscal responsibility framework. So I want to understand the logic.
What's
I want
the
to
challenge?
understand.
Turn on the mic.
I want to understand.
I didn't turn off your mic.
I want to understand
So
why you would. Let me just make my point. The fiscal responsibility framework, which establishes PIMS and PIMSET, is designed to ensure that capital projects involving capital expenditure by the government are properly included in the budget, because there's been a history where they often weren't shovel ready, so to speak. Why are you taking them out? Why are you taking the NaRRA projects out of the fiscal responsibility framework? I just want to understand what the justification for that is.
Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So to the question, why are we not requiring the projects to go to the public investment management system? So imagine, member, as stated in this act, that cabinet would have a list, the list of projects, right? And those would be given to NaRRA. Now, if we did not exempt NaRRA, NaRRA would be required to go through the public investment appraisal branch. And that branch has the legal authority to deny, defer projects that come before it. So, yeah, so you can't.
Thank you,
Prime
sir.
Minister, your mic
Thank
is
you.
now on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we don't want to in any way compromise the fiscal framework, but bear in mind that we have already lifted the ceiling. We have already secured the funding. And so technically the decision for the capital expenditure is already made. There is an intense parallel process of subjecting all the projects to approval and permitting process. But I think the most important consideration for this House is to bear in mind that if we were to put the NaRRA projects through the PIMS process, every other project would stall. In other words, it would cripple the existing capital budget. And so the idea is not to in any way impair the existing capital budget. The existing PIMS process could not take on the projects that NaRRA are going to do and still do the regular projects. And so that would create the problem. So we have to exempt it.
Go ahead, Sean,
Just quickly,
and then to Minister Morgan.
NaRRA's projects would be provided for in the annual budget, I would imagine, of the country, right? The funding to be supplied to them. So that would be approved or put into the budget on the basis of what they say they can execute through the year without the benefit of the PIMS adjudication as to whether that's really so or not. Okay.
So remember,
So they would, yeah. No, so they would issue, I mean, but the normal drawdown of those funds would apply so that there would be warrants and so on at the time the funds are actually needed to be dispersed.
yes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Minister
can we
Morgan.
put the amendments to clause 26 and the clause?
Members, we put the amendments to clause 26 and we put clause 26 as amended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Yeah. Can we now go back to clause 20 to resolve the matter?
The renumbering as well, Minister. I would prefer to put the renumbering unless you have any other amendments to just concretize the renumbering done. 27, 28 onwards.
No, we have already renumbered.
No, we didn't put it.
Yes, I put the amendments and then the clause.
Oh, in 26.
Yes.
Okay, no problem.
And now we want to.
Going back to clause 20.
So the amendment we wish to put for clause 20 is we're going to modify 21A to say the name, a description, and the promoter of the project. And I wish to put that amendment.
I put
And
the
the clause.
amendment and the clause as amended. Those in favor? Those
Let me-
against? The ayes have it.
Let me read it again. Just for Hansard.
Read it as amended, please, Minister. Minister Morgan. please read the clause as amended?
The name, a description, and the promoter of the project. Chair, I wish to push clause 27 without amendment.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Chair, I wish to make an amendment to clause 28. In the marginal note to the clause, delete the word "the." I wish to put the amendment on the clause.
We put clause 28, the amendment and the clause. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
For clause 29, I wish to
No,
make the
I-
amendment, delete the word section 31 and substitute therefore the words section 32. I wish to put the amendment on the clause.
Aline, hold on a moment. Member from St. James West Central.
Madam Chairman, I wanted to ask a question in relation to clause 28 as renumbered. The authority is dissolved. What criteria would trigger the dissolution of the authority? There's nothing that says when it comes to an end, but on it coming to an end, so many other things happen. So what are the criteria?
I don't think so, the minister. Go ahead, Minister Morgan.
So it would not have been wise to put in the legislation the end date of the entity. And if you look at section 1, subsection 3, you will see part 4, dissolution and transitional arrangements shall come into operation on a date to be appointed by the minister by notice in the Gazette. And in the bill, generally, you have provisions as it relates to the assets and liabilities of the entity. And the entity will be dissolved when it has fulfilled its mandate. That's the response. Chair?
There's no time.
No, there.
Yes, Minister Morgan.
Having the objects and reasons reflected in the bill.
Chair?
Isn't that
can we put clause 29 amendments and the clause?
I put the
amendment-
amendments.
The amendment was delete the word section 31 and substitute therefore the word section 32.
I put the amendments, which is already documented on the amendment sheet and the clause as amended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
In the schedule.
We have another clause.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. So I wish to put clause 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34, and 35.
All right, so before, no. Member Russell and then Member Malahoo Fort.
So, Minister, you introduced a new term earlier on. Will that be defined, the promoter? Okay. All right. And then you said because the mandate isn't specific in the act. So I thought the closest thing to the mandate was the objects and reasons. So the suggestion earlier on of having that copied and put in. Yeah, man, but. No, but I'm saying, but what he said, the question was, when will it be dissolved? And the response was, no. The response was that when it's fulfilled its mandate. You can't put time and you can't tell me what the mandate is. So how do we know? I don't understand that.
From
No, the member from St. James, West Central, next.
Madam Chair, I'm just seeking some clarification in respect of clause 34 as renumbered, the transitional arrangements. During the Prime Minister's budget presentation, he indicated that an incentive for redevelopment and relocation work that will be undertaken in the parishes of Trelawney, Hanover, Westmoreland, and St. Elizabeth. For the next 2 years, transfer tax on property would be reduced by 50%. This speaks to transfer tax, property tax, stamp duty. How does this provision relate to that announcement that had been made in respect of those parishes?
Go ahead, Leader.
My understanding is that those transfers that benefit from that discount or abatement or whatever you call it, and I hope it's been put into the law, probably hasn't, would be transfers between individuals or corporations. In other words, transfers of land between people who own land and people acquiring land from them in those parishes. Isn't this dealing with transfers pursuant to NaRRA's winding up, dissolution? So these are going to have to now be vested in the Commission of Lands or whoever it is. And it's saying that there's no transfer tax on that. I don't know why there's a reference to property tax, because a transfer of land doesn't trigger a property tax liability. That liability is triggered at April 1 every year. But it's stated there, and I didn't make an issue of it, but it doesn't really belong.
Members, I know as asked, put clause 30 to 35. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I said 30 to 35. It is very late. I said I put clauses 30 to 35. What about the schedule, Minister?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I wish to make amendments to the schedule. I wish to renumber paragraphs 5, 6, and 7 as paragraphs 6, 7, and 8 respectively, and insert next after paragraph 4 the following. Conflict of interest. 5.1. The Chief Executive Officer shall not have a direct interest in a procurement contract made or proposed to be made by the authority. 2. Where the Chief Executive Officer has knowledge of a direct interest, the Chief Executive Officer shall forthwith disclose that interest in writing to the Minister. 3. On receipt of the disclosure referred to in subsection 2, the Minister may, if he thinks fit, require the Chief Executive Officer to dispose of such interests held by him within such time as the Minister may specify in writing. I put the amendments to the schedule and the schedule.
Any concerns with that? Member Malahoo Fort?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The inclusion of this amendment is a welcome, is welcome. I just wonder whether, in light of the delegation, the fact that the authority may delegate to anyone, any person, critical functions, whether the conflict of interest provision should not extend to anyone who performs a function under the law, a major function.
Good. Chair, there are, in debating the inclusion of this clause, as you know, this is a new clause. The question we kept asking ourselves is, how do we put in a provision when so many other pieces of legislation contemplate rules and regulations to govern the behavior of employees in an organization? And we decided, based on advice from counsel, that the individual most exposed and should be held accountable is the Chief Executive Officer, as other regulations and laws govern the actions of the employees under him or her.
Minister, I know, as instructed, put the schedule as, oh, not yet?
I did not realize that there were two versions of this as well.
Really?
So just to say that you've taken out the criminal offense provision that was in the original proposed amendments for breaches of this. And it's clear NaRRA is going to have a proper staff. The CEO is going to be an employee of NaRRA. So I don't really understand the logic as to why the only employee of NaRRA who doesn't have to avoid conflicts of interest is the CEO. What about the CFO, the CEO, the Chief Operating Officer, the Chief Financial Officer, and any other senior executives? I don't, to my mind, this is too limited and should be, the prior draft was better. It was more appropriate.
Again, if I may try to elucidate the position. Again, the same thought process was brought to bear as the leader of the opposition and the member from West Central St. James would have earlier expressed. Firstly, there is a comprehensive piece of legislation called the anti-corruption, what's it called? The Corruption Prevention Act, which defines what is a conflict of interest, the offense of it, and how it is treated. So we didn't need to go and re-legislate that within this bill. In the same way that, for example, in the BOJ Act, or which it was the bank
Bank of Jamaica.
the Bank of Jamaica Act. Yeah, the governor, which would be the key decision maker, would be required to make a disclosure and to deconflict themselves, if you would use that term. And so we apply the same thing here to the chief executive officer, that position. He should deconflict himself. And if such a conflict exists, he should disclose it to the minister and make amends in the time given to him by the minister.
Go ahead, Minister Morgan.
I put the amendments on the clause, on the schedule.
Put the schedule, the minister puts the schedule. Those in favor?
And the amendments.
And the amendment. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister Morgan.
I put the entire bill and the title and enacting provisions.
Minister puts the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Okay.
By clause, you do not have to put the bill again. That was the decision taken to do all of this elaborate clause and divide. So the bill has passed committee stage, and I would just love to double check. Legal counsel, I am counting 20 amendments. Are we all in one accord? Confirming. So I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 20 amendments. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. We're back in the House. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 20 amendments. Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, at 1:26, it gives me great pleasure to ask for third reading of the bill.
The question is that the bill now be read a third time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it, Clerk.
A bill entitled An Act to Make Provision for the Management.
No, that's fine. That's members, that's fine. The opposition has asked for a divide on the third reading of the bill.
Mr. Azan, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Mr. Buchanan, your vote. Mr. Bunting, Mr. Burchell, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Chang Jr., Mr. Chuck, Mr. Clark, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Mr. Crawford, Miss Crawford, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Miss Daly, Mrs. Dalrymple Philibert, Dr. Dawes, Mr. Golden, Mr. Gordon, Ms. Grange, Mr. Green, Ms. Hamilton, Mr. Hales, Mr. Hines, Dr. Holness, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, sorry, Miss Jess, Miss Lee, Mrs. Malahu Fort, Ambassador Marks, Mr. Main, Mr. Mackenzie, Mrs. Miller Bennett, Mr. Montague, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Morris, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Newell, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Ms. Perkis, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Dr. Russell, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Seabright, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Smith, Mr. Terrelong, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Darrell Vaz, Mr. Dwayne Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Delroy Williams, Mr. Donovan Williams, Mrs. Williams, and Mr. Witter.
Members, the report of the tally is that the vote is ayes 31, nay 15, and absent 16. You may go ahead and read the bill a third time.
A bill entitled, An Act to Make Provision for the Management and Implementation of the Post-Disaster Reconstruction and Resilience Efforts consequent on the passage of Hurricane Melissa and for resilience generally, to establish the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority and for connected matters read a third time and passed.
Members, please do not move a muscle. The business of the House for the day continues. We will go back to House Leader in respect of the agenda.
Madam Speaker, we had gone straight to public business. I now ask for the recommittal of all the items on the agenda.
The request is that all items on the agenda be recommitted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Statement by ministers. Announcements. Clerk.
Laid on the table of the House are the following. Ministry paper number 2324 of 2025-26, titled Cabinet Agenda Issues, dated the 12th of January 2026, January 19, 2026, and January 26, 2026, respectively. Overarching Policy for Jamaica's Protected Areas System 2026 and its related ministry paper numbered 26 of 2026, titled Overarching Policy for Jamaica's Protected Areas System. National Keys Management Policy for Jamaica and its related ministry paper number 27 of 2026, titled The National Keys Management Policy for Jamaica. Report of the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations, on the Insurance Amendment of 20th Schedule Regulations 2026. the General Consumption Tax Amendment of Schedules Order 2026 and its resolution under the General Consumption Tax Act, and amendment to Ministry Paper numbered 17 of 2026 entitled Revenue Measures for the Financial Year 2026-2027.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees. Members, I am encouraging the member who submitted the report for the Regulations Committee. Went ahead? Okay, here, go ahead, member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House of Representatives a copy of the report of the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations on the insurance amendment of 20th Schedule Regulation 2026.
Minister of Finance, please. Oh, sorry. Notices of motions given orally, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Whereas by virtue of Section 61 of the General Consumption Tax Act, herein referred to as the Act, the Minister may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules to the Act. And whereas the schedules to the Act specify the general consumption tax and the special consumption tax imposed on the supply in Jamaica or the importation into Jamaica of goods and services. And whereas on the 28th day of April 2026, the Minister made the General Consumption Tax Amendment of Schedules Order 2026. And whereas it is provided by Section 62 of the Act that an order amending the schedules to the Act shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives. And whereas it is desirable that the General Consumption Tax Amendment of Schedules Order 2026 be affirmed by resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Honorable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the General Consumption Tax Amendment of Schedules Order 2026 Resolution, the General Consumption Tax Amendment of Schedules Order 2026, which was laid on the table on the 28th day of April 2026, is hereby affirmed. Madam Speaker, I further give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Member Whittle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move. Be it resolved that the reports of the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives and its deliberations on the insurance amendment of 20th Schedule Regulation 2026, which was laid on the table of the House on the 28th day of April 2026, be adopted. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you, Minister Whittle. Questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentations of bills without leave of the House first obtained. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, we will have Minister Whittle just to do his motion, and then we will take the
Public business.
Oh, no, I'll take it there today. Yeah.
So hold on, Minister Whittle, public business. You may go now.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the motion be approved.
Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Minister of Finance?
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to take the motion notice of which was given earlier. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, the General Consumption Tax Amendment of Schedules Order 2026 are being presented to this Honorable House to affirm the related resolution to give legislative and operational effect to revenue measures previously announced during the budget debate. In doing so, Madam Speaker, the order and the resolution now before the House represent a critical step in giving legislative and operational effect to these policies. They provide for the implementation of targeted adjustments within the general consumption tax and special consumption tax regimes. These measures, Madam Speaker, are not introduced in isolation. Rather, they form part of the government's broader fiscal response to the current economic environment, including the increased expenditure pressures arising in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa and the continued need to safeguard fiscal stability while maintaining essential public services. Against that background, Madam Speaker, I will now briefly outline the order and resolution to give effect to the measures as previously announced. Madam Speaker, the order provides for the amendment of specific provisions of the General Consumption Tax Act to increase the rate applicable to specified tourism activities from 10% to 15% to take effect on April 1, 2027. Madam Speaker, the order also gives effect to the modification of the existing 20% duty concession on motor vehicles for specified persons. Under the revised arrangement, the import duty will remain payable, the special consumption tax exemption will be retained, and the general consumption tax will now become payable. Madam Speaker, the order also gives effect to the increase in the specific special consumption tax on alcoholic beverages from $1,230 to $1,400 per liter of pure alcohol. In a similar vein, Madam Speaker, the resolution also provides for the increase in the special consumption tax on cigarette products from $17 to $20 per stick. Both measures, Madam Speaker, will take effect on May 1, 2026. Finally, following extensive consultation and careful policy refinement, the order gives effect to the imposition of a special consumption tax on non-alcoholic sweetened beverages. As the House will recall, Madam Speaker, this measure has been the subject of considerable discussion, technical review, and stakeholder engagement. That process has allowed for a more refined approach, strengthening both the design and the application of the tax. Under the revised framework, tax is imposed at a rate of 22 cents per gram of added sweetener. In doing so, it establishes a direct relationship between tax liability and the product's sweetener content, improving its overall effectiveness and alignment with the intended policy objectives. This measure will take effect on May 1, 2026. Madam Speaker, taken together, the order and the resolution before this Honourable House give full legislative and administrative effect to the revenue measures previously announced. They represent a series of necessary adjustments within the tax system designed to strengthen revenue mobilization and ensure that the fiscal framework remains responsive to current economic conditions. In that regard, Madam Speaker, these measures form an important part of the government's continued effort to maintain fiscal stability while meeting the needs of the Jamaican people. I therefore ask this House to approve the General Consumption Tax Amendment of Schedules Order 2026 and affirm its related resolution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Could you let me turn off your mic first? The member from St. Andrew Southeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just one question of clarification on the tourism activities 1D, where it speaks to tourism accommodation not specified in A, B, or C. Would that in any way cover persons who provide short-term rentals like Airbnbs?
Turn your mic on, Minister, to respond.
Yes, it would.
So this would in effect be a new category then that would be eligible to start paying tax as of April 1st, 2027. Because prior to this, they would not have been captured in any form. Yes? Okay.
Just asking the minister in relation to the situation with the price of oil. The budget was calculated revenues based on the price of oil at a certain dollar value per barrel. Could the minister indicate, in light of the acknowledged pressures by the Minister of Energy in relation to the burden at consumer space, whether or not there's contemplation for an easing of the SCT, especially that you, the ministry, will be receiving a surplus over the assumed revenues based on the price that you had originally.
Member, I think it's way too early to be counting a surplus because, as you heard, the Minister of Energy announced, I think a week or two ago, of how many billions of dollars Petrojam itself has to absorb because it is using the pricing formula, which does not allow the full pass-through of the increase in oil to Jamaicans. And you can look and see where prices are relative to how much it is at the pump. So I think it's too early to be counting any gains at all. Madam Speaker, I close the debate and ask that the motion be approved.
Question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, we have one more matter, which is to move for the adjournment of the House. And as such, I ask that the House be adjourned for a date to be fixed. We're going to be
On adjournment, I would just like for the record to indicate it is now 1:50 a.m. the staff present here, other than the actual committee clerk for the PAAC, all the staff present here, all the orderlies, the legal officers would be required to be here at 10 a.m. I do anticipate that we may have challenges. The chairperson for the committee has insisted that they are going ahead with the meeting tomorrow. Regardless, I am following the standing orders strictly to the letter, and so I apologize on behalf of the Parliament and its administration to the employees in respect of their health and wellness in requiring that they find themselves here to facilitate the request of the chair despite this late hour of the morning. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, just on that point, I will ask the Leader of Opposition to see if he can convey to the chair of the committee that we believe in the circumstances with the House sitting until basically 2 a.m. that the committee meeting be postponed to ensure that the staff who are here with us and who have far distances to travel will not be compelled to be here at that time. So we ask that the Leader of Opposition business impress upon his colleague that that is the view of the members. No.
The question is that we do adjourn the House for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned.
Obey the road code, pay your ticket on time, and only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
I wonder who that somebody be. No, sir. Let me look for my glasses. Oh, that's somebody look like rice up. Slutty walk on. Me glad for see you, Roy. Although things never go on for you, America, me glad say you there.
Yeah.
Lift your head high.
Yeah.
Be out of trouble.
Yeah.
And you can have a fresh start back home. All right, Mr. Thanks, you hear?
Let's all work together for a fresh start back home. The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Start your mornings with a heart full of joy. Make the commitment to enjoying everyday life with PBCJ. Every Sunday at 6:30 a.m., Monday through Saturday at 6 a.m. Let each day be a new blessing.
Our Father, how excellent is thy name. Greater than all your works, greatly to be praised. These days can be so demanding. I don't wanna lean upon my own misunderstanding. So all that is for you to be mindful of me when I consider your hands. They bring forth the rain and stars. All that is for you to be mindful of me when I consider your hands. They bring forth the stars. Remember me. Remember me. People I pray, remember me, remember me, remember me. Remember me. Our Father, how excellent is thy name. Greater than all your works, greatly to be praised. These days can be so demanding. I don't wanna lean upon my own misunderstandings. So all that is for you to be mindful of me when I consider your hand. Rain and stars, all that is for you to be mindful of me when I consider your hand. That bring forth the stars. Remember me, remember me. People I pray, remember me, remember me, Jaja, ooh, remember me. Remember me, oh. Remember me. Yeah, I want you to remember me. I want you to remember when I said you. Now, this is remember me. Me, I tell you, say, I got things up today. Tomorrow, have a nice. It's always a blessing on you. Remember, yeah?